It verified that what a person is thinking and feeling shows up on their neurology, on their face, on their body, in their movement, in their coloring, in their auric field, and it is detectable instantly.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing. And it's another day in paradise. It's good to be me. I come back down to the tree and the universe brings this incredible bee. I want to welcome to the podcast Liz Larson from the collective method of transformation, Cognomovement, which is a collaboration with other contributors within this space. And I believe you're a founder of this movement. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm a co-founder. Bill McKenna is my business partner and the co-creator, co-founder of this work. We have built it and continue to create it together.
Fantastic. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And why don't we just dive right in and you can give an abbreviated summation of how you got here. How did you get to this incredible point in your own journey where you have this wisdom teaching and this method that helps people get out of their own way and start to really appreciate what it is that they're experiencing?
Well, it's interesting because my answer to this question is always, I was born this way. I understand that at this point in my life, this is what I came to the planet to do. And until this point, I was gathering information, gathering skills, gathering knowledge to do exactly this. This is why I'm here. Well, I was that kid that was, everyone would ask me questions I had no business knowing. I recall at 5 years old being asked a question by an adult that I thought, why would they ask me that? But of course, I immediately knew the answer, right? However, my parents shortly after that joined a religion in which that would have been considered demonic. Mm-hmm. And around 4, my mom, I recall her telling me, don't say that, that's ridiculous. And I felt palpably her fear. I was such an empath that when I would come home, I would look like the kids in my neighborhood. She knew exactly who I'd been with because I physically had transformed and started looking like them, sounding like them. My body would start to mimic their gait. I would try to take on in my body before I knew it and their pain and heal them. So I felt everything for everyone. So I was born this way. And then there was this period of time where this was all secretive, right? Like I knew who I was, but I couldn't be that because it was wrong. It was evil. It's demonic, right? Anyway, so fast forward in time, all kinds of education, including neuro-linguistic programming. I refused to be who I am. I owned car dealerships. I was a YouTube personality as a commercial cake decorating instructor. Hundreds of millions of views. They're still there. You can watch them. I was a makeup artist. I was a vocalist. I did anything I could not to be this. But in high school and throughout my whole life, it was like people already knew. In high school, when we had, those fairs you'd have at school where they put together things, and I was always, okay, you're going to be the fortune teller. People just know. You can't hide who you really are. Later on in life, though, my parents both came down with brain illnesses, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, at exactly the same time. Now, I understand why now, but they were the healthiest people on the planet. If you can see my face, you can see I'm Italian, Mediterranean diet, very healthy, never took any medications. They didn't have even one marker for Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. So, I mean, I thought I was going to lose my mind. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I went about learning every last thing I could about neurology and about how the body and brain could change each other. During that time, I was learning neuro-linguistic programming. And within a year after that, my master's certification there, Bill McKenna came into my life. One of those things, like, we have no business knowing each other. Bill lives in San Diego. We'd never met before. And immediately when we started working together, this started to emerge. So that's kind of the backstory. That's how it happened.
Blammo. Here
Yep.
we are.
Yeah.
And so this is like a new frontier for, the conscious collective, as they like to put it in the New Age spirituality. 36 years ago, it was just someone who was psychologically distorted. They end up on my doorstep thinking that I had a diagnosis that could go no further than a padded room. And I would exercise their energy as a Taoist priest. That's one of the rituals, very common in indigenous practices. And by exercising that, that would look like an extra on The Exorcist. But furthermore, you realize that unraveling from that at a physicality level is this transmuted state that identifies itself through the body. And when you start talking about mind, body, and spirit, this is the very detour and the distortion that screws people's heads up, because they cannot understand that they're all as one.
Yeah.
And once you start to integrate these things using these types of techniques that you're speaking of, you fundamentally change the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're speaking of the method that you have now put together collectively with your other co-founder, it's get to the point type of stuff. You mentioned NLP.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a love-hate relationship with it. If I see someone
you.
someone that's super motivated by manipulating people, I kind of torch them a little bit, because it's really quite evident how easy. I always tell people, if you're emotional and you're suggestible, it takes me about 3 seconds to enter your unconscious through a few very unassuming moments, whether it's with my breath, a frequential state, or furthermore, if you're a little rusty and you want to use linguistics, you enter in there and start changing people's very perception of reality very quickly. And they are not aware that all thoughts of their mind are not theirs.
It's true. It's true. I have that same love-hate relationship with it. And I realized quickly that when I said NLP, it's not the same animal that somebody else is talking about. There's so many variations. I'll tell you, though, it was exactly the right teacher at the right time. My trainer is called Linda Gail Campbell. She was out of Portland. Again, no reason to meet her. She's out of Seattle. Sorry. I had to drive 7 hours back and forth every month to have that training. And I just found her randomly, and she was exactly right. What I learned that made such a big difference and led to this was it verified what I already knew. It verified that what a person is thinking and feeling shows up on their neurology, on their face, mm-hmm. on their body, in their movement, in their coloring, in their auric field. And it is detectable instantly. So now that's something that we as practitioners, we have practitioners all over the world that we teach this. We call them neurological detectives. They can see where the brain and body are not interacting in a resourceful way, not right or wrong, not good or bad, just not as resourceful as it could be. And we can, through that, help them make adjustments. So we took several pieces of things that really cemented a way to talk about them, a way to teach them. Those are the things I took from NLP. A lot of it has to do with the eye accessing cues, how the eyes actually reach for information in the brain. So we all have eidetic memories. We just can't find the file. We don't have the Dewey Decimal System. This is so rude, but so many kids are too young to even know what that is. But they don't have a way they don't know how to access the file in their brain. The eyes do that for you. And because of that, the eyes can actually show you where concussion lives in the brain, where other brain injuries, and we all have them, live in the brain, and how we can reroute them. But it can also show you what really happened in your life, not what your nervous system thinks happened in your life, which can be amazing. So these are the kind of things. So I really honor everything I've ever learned, even though I don't accept all of it or use all of it anymore. But I do honor what I learned, because I know I learned it for a reason to get me to this place.
Yeah, I mean, it just fundamentally comes back to ancient indigenous practices. We look at everything as a macro of a micro. You can refer to it as, hermetic, chematic principles. I'm not a fan of that type of stuff. But within Taoism, it is a mirroring effect. So whatever is material is a yang expression of reality, which is the admission of all colors. And the opposite of that is yin, which is the absorption of all colors. And your position of ascension or awareness or awakening comes in the center point, is what we call the Wu Ji, which you refer back and unravel it to a primordial state, which is the center point, the Vesica, which is the unification of all things. So, face reading and, going down to your local massage therapist and have them, massaging your hand or your foot,
Mhm.
it all resorts back to neurology.
Yeah.
The simplicity of that, if you're looking at that at face value, I used to be a power lifter and a bodybuilder, and people would always be like, how do you acquire that state of awareness? And, if anyone ever comes to me with a dysfunction, before giving them an upgraded charge of awareness that is an instant healing, and that will be the mending and resetting of that material state to its original form. And that will come in miracles, bones fuse, gashes seal before your eyes, gangrenous flesh return back to pink in color. I've seen it all.
Mhm.
But again, I've had a few clicks, 30, oh, I don't even know, a long time. And so, this idea that there's dysfunction is you're constantly being able to re-up. And within Taoism, it's a 9 count. That's how quickly you can re-up and reset and return back to what we call the primordial mother, perfection, unification. And so, someone has a range of motion issue, for example, someone who's trapped themselves into a very restricted state. And people look at me like, oh, okay, well, I can't even sit down. I've got like back pain. I've got this, I got that. Okay, get on the ground, roll over 3 times. And they're like, what do you mean? That's it. And then they get up and I go, now squat. Holy shit, I haven't been able to touch my ass to my heels in like 30 years. That's as quickly as this stuff takes place. And that's you just putting a bandage on something that now we can take from an inner alchemy perspective and have it blossom out into this physical flesh and make it a permanence and not a transitory sort of Band-Aid.
Yeah. The thing that for me is the most important in this work is the locating of the neural pattern in the beginning, the locating of what would be called an unresourceful pattern, something that's creating something that's unwanted, right? So, for example, a frozen shoulder. What we know is that the frozen shoulder has almost nothing to do with the shoulder and is almost always connected to a previous concussion. So what we do is unwind the original neural pattern. And then what happens is the body changes and transforms around it. So in a few minutes, I can get a frozen shoulder released. But in that same moment, I've opened a visual reference to the eyes, where the eyes were blind in a place where the brain's not working. Fantastic, right? Feels like a miracle to the person who is having the experience. But what I know, and what's more important, is that is only the initial change that allows the nervous system to then grow in around it. So from that one change, 6 months later, they keep changing. We release the shoulder, but now all of a sudden, their finances come together. Now all of a sudden, that relationship they're having trouble with works out. And people say, what is this? Some kind of magic? They love to put that label on it. And it feels like that. But what it is that now the nervous system is not askew. Like it's not like this, Now it's making decisions based on what's really happening in life, not some twist of the limbic system, not some fight or flight response. And that is what happens. People don't realize that any fight or flight response can grow into torsion in the body, skewed perspectives in every area of life. And so conversely, resetting even one of those patterns allows the rest of the system to develop around it. Now, with that being said, here's the part that lights me up. That when you do this, and you do it repeatedly, you're kind of challenging those unresourceful feelings, states, whatever, rerouting the neural pattern, you start to become who you really are. The outside world stops affecting you in the way that it did. You're not in battle, in fight or flight, protecting anymore. You literally start to radiate. Your energy becomes fully available. And for myself and practitioners around the world, Bill and I, we use this daily, about 5 minutes, just to make sure everybody's online, lights are on and everybody's home. But what I find for myself is on day one, I'm one person. I'm one version of Liz. On day 7, I'm somebody else completely. I realize I'm more powerful. I'm more centered. I'm more connected. I can receive information quicker. My ideas and inspiration are off the charts. So for me, it's about that. It's about really becoming who you really are in this lifetime. And I think that is the point of this. I think it's giving us that opportunity to take a bit of the guesswork, a bit of the mysticism out, which I know people want the mysticism, and I love it too, but it just takes a bit of that out so that it's a technical function that you do, and then everything else fills in around it. All those beautiful psychic abilities, all of that ability to move matter, the ability to see the future, all of those things get bigger and greater and brighter as the nervous system gets farther and farther out of a fight or flight pattern.
Yeah, it's one of the first things I teach any of my students, which is your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions.
Right. Except for most people have such a hard time with that.
Well, not when I'm done with them.
Yeah.
That's part of the Taoist path. That's the first basement level entry, is to understand that the secret ingredients to reality is a thought, feeling, and emotion.
Yeah.
Once you dissolve and transmute the feeling and the emotion, the thought is nothing more than wisdom to reflect on, but it doesn't have the charge where you get into what I'm a little bit of not a fan of is, psychology. It's such a misdirection, but
Yeah.
you want to talk to someone about psychosomatic, that's the very definition of what you're experiencing when you're experiencing something that is created from the mind, which is all things, but for you feel separated from it. So you're experiencing something through your body that absolutely is connected. So, nervous system, frozen shoulder, what someone would call within your space neurocoupling is quite similar to most of the indigenous practices, where it's never where you think it is. But furthermore, for me, trigger and trauma is you throw it out the baby with the bathwater, because it's nothing more than energy potential, as opposed to grandma didn't give me 6 cookies when I was 5, and furthermore, daddy didn't let me out when I was 10 to go and play with my friends on a warm summer night, and I forever am in deficiency of my relationships because of. I love the way that you center this in origin about the transmutation of the body. So the body is the lowest level of transmutation. If you're experiencing something in the body, you have really screwed up. You're at that low level of awareness that it's transmuted and it presents itself in the physical flesh. This is a part of continually ignoring what is the signal to give you a result.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is interesting because you remember, You Can Heal Your Life, Louise Hay, every emotion causes an illness. And, I've heard in Chinese medicine, there's 100 emotional reasons for any given health problem. So I think that's very, very interesting. And there's another level that we've discovered of this, of pairing between physical injury and emotional injury. So I think, I don't know if it was on camera or not, that I shared with you at 4, my mom said, don't say that, that's ridiculous. And I realized that that had created a core feeling for me of, okay, that we don't be who you are, because that's not okay, right? But what we've really discovered is that so often when you have one of those, like you were saying, the core wound in your life that makes your emotional state form around it is often paired with a head injury. Why does the nervous system deem something so dangerous that it creates a neural pattern that absorbs all your energy? Well, very, very often, I would say about 90 to 95% of people that we see, that big moment in their life was paired with a minor or major head injury. So I'll tell you a story. One of my little clients, she's 14, beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous girl, eating disorder, horrible feeling about herself, low self-esteem, all these problems. And it went back to this moment in time when she was 7, when her cousin kicked her, or claimed she kicked her cousin. She got in trouble for something she didn't do. That's the bottom line. One of those things that happens when we're kids. But that was the moment in her life that defined who she is, what she was about, everything, her worth, her value, all of it. So I said, have you ever hit your head? Did you have a car accident? Did you fall? No, I never have. And then I remember that her mom said, oh, she does karate. I said, don't you do karate and she said, yeah. I said, have you ever been accidentally kicked in the head? Or she goes, oh my God, yeah, the day before that incident and the day after, right? So the nervous system, this is what it's made to do. It keeps us safe and alive. So it records things. So head injury, brain's off kilter already. With a kid, the brain is growing every other day, right? Every other day. Left hemisphere, right hemisphere. So if you get kicked in the right that day, that growth doesn't happen. It reroutes to the left, right? So kicked in the head, emotional injury, minor, but the nervous system says, oh, this is really, really important. We're going to put all of our attention on it. Then the next day, kicked in the head again, doubly important. So in her case, when we cleared the concussion, meaning we rerouted the way the neural pathway was happening in the brain, that incidence was like, oh, that was dumb. That was just a kid thing. Gone. However, then the system had to reset around it. And it did. And, she's like the happiest, most, lively, dating, driving, working kid ever. But if she'd spent time in therapy to try to remove that wound, that 7-year-old wound, you could have never unwound it. It didn't make sense. Not logical. It was physical. So in our line of work, a lot of times you do go for the emotional, but we also look at what else happened. Why is the body holding this pattern? So when we release it, the consciousness just, expands exponentially, because it's no longer, the energy in the body is no longer being held in that place as a protective pattern. It reroutes, and now the body starts to heal again. The frontal lobes are now active. You're moving hemispheres easily, and you have access to this tool that you came to experience through in a way that you didn't have before. I don't know if that answered what you were talking about, or I just went in a whole nother direction, but
it doesn't really matter. You say tomato, I say tomato.
Yeah.
It's all gravy, baby. All gravy. Which, it's always insight.
Yeah.
Retrospect is 2020 or something like, I can't remember the quote, but it's some throwaway cliche.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020.
There you go. In reality, as a Taoist, we just look at reality as a bellows. So everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time.
Yeah.
So the simplicity of that returns to the primordial breath. So yin and yang, breathing in and out, is evidence of yin and yang, which is a byproduct of what we call the void, which is the primordial mother. That's the unification. All my physicist friends out there, shout out to Tom Campbell. The truth is is that's what, my parapsychologist friend would call the 0 point, the evidence of the entanglement, the Max Planck unit of energy, the bending of reality, the spooky action of Albert Einstein. These are all fantastic revelations in the last 100 years. What I'm speaking of is an ascension that is thousands, tens of thousands. I would love to have a conversation of hundreds of thousands of years old through my own evidence of channeling, which is the highest point of ascension for a Taoist path. But then we get back down to an incredible method that you have acquired through your own intuitive state of awareness, through your own biological upgrades and path of reality that has brought you to these incredible tools that are instantly healing. I agree with you 1,000%. Someone can take charge if looking at the lens of it from a fight or flight or just neuroplasticity, which I love having discussions with scientists or neuroscientists that believe that there's certain things that cannot be obtained. So when I tell people I will have you have dominion over the 50 trillion cells of your physical flesh, and you can feel your third eye, and I have a scientist telling me, piss off, it doesn't exist, it's not sympathetically innovated, it's not going to happen. I will show you that you access that electrical potential within that 0.07 millivolts of electric potential within this unit. So the neurology is a fantastic base point to acquire change. Someone goes, I've got a pain in my neck. Really? Take your hand. And they're like, yes. Do this. Take your index finger. Yes. Now do this and circulate it in a clockwise fashion. And they're like, what the just happened? Why is the pain gone away? Well, if you want to water it down to neurology, it's called a mechanoreceptor. It brings down the fight or flight, as you mentioned, and instantly obtains some level of expansion that is not indicated. Now, what we call the experience we're having right now, the commune, the charge you just got up your body, this shivering effect, that is what we call psychokinesis, where you are now exhibiting this palpability of unification that cannot be denied. It's through the body, which I love. It's like you cannot, if you're thinking you're not knowing, if you're feeling, you are all knowing to everything. And I think that when you acquire the signaling through your neuroplasticity, deciphering the mapping, all the things that you put in that give people instant healings, because that's really what's going on here.
Yeah.
Your method is profound because it shows someone evidence. All this stuff is transitory delusional states of grandeur until you show me substance. The substance for a Taoist is what we call Faixin. It's the plasma, it's the energy, it's the unification, it's the 0 point, it's the chi, baby. And I'm a Pepsi guy, so I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone. Show me what you've got now.
Yeah.
And that's where people go, oh, hang on, it's all about my angels. And it's all, listen, dude, we have this present moment. That's it. Anything else is absolutely irrelevant. So when you tap into that, you get what you're handing out, which is change and healing.
Yeah. It's really true. I love all that stuff. I can get as woo-woo as the next gal. I mean, I've had some amazing experiences. But I think my driver for this work, and I truly, truly believe that it became available. Availability is a big word for me. It became available now, and it continues. This work expands minute by minute. But I realized that when people were talking about obtaining consciousness, when they were thinking about meditating, when they were trying to develop a psychic skill, when all of the things that people wanted in modern day self-help and spirituality also came with a whole lot of guilt and shame and fear when it didn't happen. And I realized that one of the big reasons is that the body is all bound up with its energy focused on other things. And it keeps the consciousness low, like you said. When there's a problem in the physical body, you're in the lowest state. So, all of those lower energies of shame and fear and guilt and doubt, we realized that we could access the neural pattern that ran that program. It's like a shortcut, like a hack. And when that was released, the energy flowed, and all of a sudden, the understanding of these things, the availability appeared for that human. So it allowed the energy of the body, the chi, if you will, the natural vibrance, more of who a person really is, more of that higher self, to literally flow through and utilize these cells to interact and create change in the world around them. So one of the things that happened in our work is, there's always kind of a mental discovery and then the science that backs it. And I think it was Randy Weitnehmer, and I think Randy Weitnehmer is also do you know Randy Weitnehmer? He's a martial artist. I don't know him well, but there was something he said that made me think in a new direction. And he was talking about the field around the body and talking about how the emotions were also available in the field. And it occurred to me instantly that there's an eye position that connects with the brain, an emotional feeling, and a space in the field where that also exists. Well, science matches that. They can now see the flash of light in the field, that there's actually mass in our thoughts and our emotions. They can now actually print out your dreams. They can see them. So it's blurry, but it's like the same colors, the same shapes. It's there. So everything we're experiencing is also being experienced here. Well, then I realized that if I have a feeling of, let's say, shame, don't be that, don't talk that way, right? Don't reveal yourself. Mm. And someone comes within my vicinity with a similar issue, we're a match. Now that energy is bigger, right? Now we're co-creating that together. Now I'm going to experience that person seeing me as not who I really am. And I'm going to see them who is not who they really are. And we're going to go like this, or we're going to love each other, right? We're going to build each other's insecurity. And then we have, some kind of a relationship that's not so resourceful. So we realized that we could actually take this triangulation, the part of the brain that's running the pattern, the emotional feeling, the thing that sends a signal, and the place in the field that it exists. And we could actually start to clear it also in the field. We could utilize that piece. But then what started to happen is, if we knew it, I know this is my pattern, right? And I know I have that pattern with you. I could change it in me, and then that person would start to look and act and sound completely different. People would say, oh my God, I went home and it was like they were a different human. No, you are. And the energy you're emitting, the patterns you're emitting are no longer a match to that old one that you had. It's cleared. So all of a sudden the relationship is healed in the most weird, spooky action at a distance way. And then, like I said before, then all of a sudden, weirdly, the finances cleared up. Or now all of a sudden, you are fully aware of a being that you couldn't see before that now heals your body. Or, now you have that ability to see what's happening somewhere else on the planet. These spiritual gifts that people wanted now become fully available. So it's about working with the nervous system at its core in the body, but also how it affects the outside the body and how it's connected to the rest of this 3D planet.
Yeah, I mean, it really does return to, in so many ways, the placebo effect, because it derives from your belief system. There's a certain amount of that neurology that can be dispelled within that energy potential. So as a Taoist, this is the fundamental understanding of reality as a bellows. You're all things and nothing at the same time. And your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find the center point, because this resides within everything. Everything has energy potential.
Yeah.
So we would quantify that as light to wave to matter to particle, realized with your attention, intention, cutting from the primordial cloth of perfection, the unified state, the 0 point. We call this distortion, which is what a Buddhist called the dukkha. And furthermore, in closer inquiry, you would realize that this is the currency of this duality, this material state. The currency is energy potential. That energy
Yeah.
potential is vibratory, frequential, and if met with resonance, oh yes, it will be yours. Oh yes, it will, always. And
Yeah.
that's the mastery of alchemy for a Taoist, is to acquire that. And fundamentally, it transmutes into more contemporary offerings like yours, where I believe we're speaking the same language.
Yeah.
It's just a different lens, which is the same thing. When it comes to consciousness, the diamond of perfection, we have our own facet, but it all comes from that same unified state.
Yeah.
And then you get results. And it's all about the results, baby. I want
Yeah.
to see it and permanence, not
Mhm.
transitory, fleeting delusion where, oh yeah, I got this and the pain's gone, and 3 days later I want my money back, because this is light worker, energy healing, qigong, you name it. Anyone that comes from biology, neurology, physiology, and furthermore, anything that's one lens is going to be limited at its best. Your
Yeah.
integration of what you're talking about is using all these incredible tools to find a path, and as you said, mapping, finding a path that is valid for that individual self-realization, which comes in a form of healing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I love that you use the word distortion. It's a really good word, because that's what it is. This part of your body that's meant to keep you safe and alive, it will distort the information that's coming in just to protect you. Like in my case, don't be who you really are, because that's not safe and someone is going to hurt you. And so for that reason, we're going to distort everything that comes in to match that belief system, right? It's a belief, not here, but a belief in my limbic system, the part that's supposed to do this, to say, let's ratchet that down, let's suppress that, let's keep that over here so you don't get hurt. But that creates a distortion in how I see the rest of the world. My worldview is shaped around what my body perceives as my biggest injury. And I always think about it this way. It's like, in water, if you've got a buoy like this and there's a weight held to it, it's constantly pushing it under. But it wants to buoy back up. Like who we really are wants to move back up. But there's this thing holding it down, suppressing. And if everybody on the planet knew for sure that whatever view they have on anything is distorted by their past experiences and the way the body believes in them, they would recognize that you could change that. You could challenge it. You could shift that very, very rapidly. And that's what we do. Inside ourselves, if I have a day where I'm grouchy about something, somebody annoys me, somebody says something I don't like, instantly I know, oh, that's actually me. That's me. That's my distortion. So my tool is, we call it doing the ball. I use my tool and I address the system that is creating that opinion. It's just the body's opinion, right? Until I get to a place where it feels like neutral. And now who I really am, now my higher self and even my logical mind is like, oh, I see that for what it really is, which is completely different in the way I saw it in the first place, which is reality. We see reality through these distortions, and it's only our singular reality until it's not. And that's what feels like a miracle, is that 1 minute later, oh my God, the world just opened up for me. I just realized my deepest truth wasn't true at all. I just realized the thing I thought happened to me didn't happen that way, right? So in this way, it gives a person the availability to choose what reality they're in, to choose what signal they're sending out in the world, to choose how they're interacting with another being. The other thing I wanted to say, just to piggyback on what you were saying, is this is one modality. This is one thing that speaks to a certain group of people. What I know for sure is right now, the availability on this planet of ways to heal instantly are immense. Some are happening in science. Some are remembering ancient practices, bringing them back and clarifying them. Some are doing things like we're doing. What I think for myself that's important about my work, what drives me, is that people need to right now become as aware as possible. They need to rise up. Some people will call it into the 4 or 5D, which is really just a level of awareness, the ability to really see this for what it actually is. We need to right now be able to detach ourselves from the old programming, detach ourselves from all of the old world views, detach ourselves from what it's not about, so that we can know what it is. And so for me, I'm well aware that our work isn't for everyone, but there are people who are like, oh, that's it. There's a fundamental core there that I can create change with. And then here's the beauty of our work. It can be added to anything else. We find people who, have practiced Qigong for years, all of a sudden have a much greater understanding, a much greater ability. People who do meditation are doing that better. People who are athletes are now much higher level athletes. Like, it opens up the ability to learn, to understand, and to send and receive information. It opens consciousness. So it's an and for lots of other things. That's the way we view it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I would attribute it to my definition of what you're explaining as a contemporary version of feng shui, because you're just reconfiguring energy potential. And you could go to that cute little Keebler name by the name of Bruce Lipton and decipher things more in a sensory or self-receptors within the dermal layer, transmitting through your biofield.
Yeah.
An alchemical process of the pituitary thalamus and pineal gland, creating from that this chemistry that uses the culture medium of the blood to transmit and turn on and off your gene expression at will, which is nothing more than right now.
Yeah.
And furthermore, for an alchemist, we need to see it. So the substance is critical. The energy potential has to be identified, and ultimately it's frequential, and the resonance is really what you need to hold. Point and check. When you come down to the wet ass hour, I am no place, no person, no thing. And so for me to witness physical healing, I measure my brainwaves for over a couple of decades now. I'm between 40 to 100, sometimes 400 hertz. And it's super, gamma, lambda, whatever you want to call it. But it's witnessing a healing. It throws away the baby with the bathwater, Hawkins scale of consciousness. Unfortunately, my personality is going to say this nonsense of a hertz frequency, because the now is where you get it. And it will be evident in the proof in the pudding. We need to see it. We need to materialize it as such. And that will come from incredible techniques like the ones that you're using that will absolutely give someone a shift that will change the path of their material state of physicality through this neurology, through this energy potential. You will see it. It will be revealed to you.
Yeah.
It's like people just come out of it and they look like they dropped like 40 wrinkles from their face. Their head gets readjusted, their bones, everything. All of a sudden, holy crap, you don't even look like the same person. I am not. I have been rewired. I have been upgraded using techniques like yours. And this is the power of what we're speaking of. And it integrates from ancient practices I teach, furthermore, contemporary stuff like the stuff you put in. And it all comes down to the get down. Show me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. There couldn't be more true. I say this, that after a Cognomovement session, what we do, you're not the same person because you're wired differently. You literally leave the session a different being. Everything is processing differently. You see the world a different way. You're taking in information differently, and you're acting and reacting differently. You interact completely differently. You're not the same. Our wiring really dominates how we perceive this world. The most interesting thing is I'll have somebody come in with a 10 out of a 10 problem. They'll say, Liz, my biggest problem is, okay. Most practitioners like, oh, that's a big problem. Oh my gosh, you were tortured or you had, right? I'm like, okay. For right this second, that's true. In my mind, this is what I say, right? No attachment to the story, because I know in a few minutes that won't exist. So at the end, I'll repeat back, okay, you came in and there was this problem and it was the biggest problem in your life. And they look at me and I can see it. And it always makes me laugh. What? The problem, this big problem that you had in your life, it was a 10 out of a 10. Let's test, where are you now? They'll say, Liz, I never had that problem. Interesting. So I'll take my notebook and I'm like, well, why are you here? Oh, yeah. Oh, I did have that. And then they start laughing. But it's because the nervous system no longer holds that perspective. It's no longer giving that information anymore. It just seems to be gone. Right? And they're shocked. Like, this has been my obsession for 40 years. And now I don't remember it. Their eyes will start going like this. And I'll say, are you looking for it? Yeah. Where is it? Or the other thing that they say that I always really entertains me is they'll say, Liz, is this real life? Did we time travel? And my answer is always yes and yes. That's what it feels like. You've literally shifted time and dimension where this was true, and now it isn't. That's time travel to me. That's shifting dimension to me. And, oftentimes for that human, the reality absolutely is shifted. They are in a brand new timeline. And they are now on a different trajectory in terms of their life, but in terms of their consciousness, in terms of their awareness, in terms of everything, their belief, all of it has shifted. So that qualifies as shifting reality, shifting time.
Yeah, it's always good to get that fundamental stuff. I've got 6 kids. I've taught 5 of them the fundamentals of conscious and unconscious process. They know how to remote view, telepathy, telekinesis. These types of things are very developmental skills, psychokinesis, but they're very palpable without any boundaries, without any barriers. And, the first thing you want to be aware of is your environment. And the truth is, the conscious and unconscious process, until otherwise noted, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. So
right.
Basic level is you need to fundamentally understand something as simplistic as infantile as hypnosis, because without that, you're truly walking through your life with potentially being commandeered with your attention, intention, and not fully embracing your own potential, your own innate power.
Yeah.
Comes from dissolving that boundary between the two. And that's from a neurological or brainwave perspective, you can measure that very quickly.
Yeah.
I have friends that are neuroscientists that measure, psychics and channelers like myself. And one of them is involved in a podcast right now called the Telepathy Tapes. And he's measuring a lot of these autistic children that literally, they shit on precognitive abilities to a point where normally, you give someone a 25% chance, 4 choices out of 1. These guys are randomly be given 400 different messages at once, one after another, and getting them 100% correct 400 times in a row. And this is just dissolving the boundaries. And that's fundamentally some of the stuff that, has to go on to realize it. But hypnosis is always a good little indicator of what's possible now. And it's like a little taste. The ascended states that I'm talking about of consciousness and extracting from the ether information about others that potentially would be, not possible, is nothing more than a learned sensory perception that you have to develop. And I can see the complementary effects of your healing and how people can then further explore the ebb and flow of that symbiosis that comes with the energy potential. So when you're able to regulate the energy within your physical body, that is an indigenous practice. We call it Nigong, internal power, through the lens of Nidan, internal alchemy. You have this harnessed ability that is not transitory, it's permanent. And you get that stuff.
Yeah. And it is something you said before. It is, well, our work is quite permanent. Once the neurology changes itself, I don't do anything. I don't change neurology. I'm a guide for the system. We have developed a way to access what people call the subconscious, but I believe is really just the nervous system, the action reaction. We found a way to access it, a back door, and we guide the system to auto-correct itself. So the system finds its most resourceful state, and it stays there. It doesn't go back, because it's not a temporary thing. It's a permanent change, and then everything grows around it. But I wanted to say about the telepathy tapes. We have intimate knowledge of that. Some of our work, actually, some of our most recent miraculous discoveries come from some of those people that you were talking about. And the understanding that they don't have necessarily control over the physical body. They are, a lot of times the body will do its own thing, which is what they were able to tell us. We found a way to access their nervous system through the non-focused vision. It's not exactly a peripheral vision, but the understanding that they're mostly active outside the body. And when we know that, we actually address them in their field outside the body, allowing the brain to then talk to itself in a way that gives them the ability to control both hemispheres at the same time, to control their body, to move their body, to move their eyes, to get back in a little bit, enough that they can function more in the world. So one of our most advanced practitioners, this is what she does. And she had discovered a long time ago that they were talking telepathically to her. And, that understanding of how that works and how their particular body is functioning actually opened a whole new realm of cognomovement in utilizing for neurotypical people. None of us are neurotypical, but neurotypical people accessing the part of the non-focused vision that allows the brain to instantly start communicating the left and right hemisphere. What we also realized is that when we start to utilize this part of our vision that is always available, but often blocked through concussion or injury, all kinds of things, and also we don't use it, we just don't focus on it. When we do that, the consciousness also instantly expands. It's like the world goes, whoo. The system calms down, and all of a sudden you are connected with everything. So because of exactly those people you're talking about, and the work of the people behind the telepathy tapes, the practitioners who made these discoveries, we have been able to utilize that information for us and for the rest of the world too, and really enhance the lives of those people who are, experiencing things like autism.
Yeah, I mean, it's watered down to resonance. And that's where the alchemy doesn't get caught up in the weeds of whether grandma gave you a cookie when you were 5.
Yeah.
All that goes out with the baby, with the bathwater, because trigger and trauma is, again, a psychological state, which I'm not a fan of, because you're trying to play some type of conjured alchemy with my mind and separate it from my body.
Yeah.
This is part of the distortion, because when you put it down to energy, vibratory, frequential, and resonance, all bets are off. Show me, because when you access it, it's very simplistic. That's why hypnosis is a great entry level. And, living out here in Las Vegas, we like to go down to the Strip and we play Magic Day. I call it street magic, where, as a family, people are always partying on the Strip. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm having a good time. you're going to very confidently walk up to someone and say, would you like to experience bliss right now? They're like, sure. Friend gets their camera out. They're standing there, and it's a stoic moment of realization. And as they say that, I've already created a resonance, and they're out. And they go, what just happened? Don't worry. What is the question that you would like to ask before we recharge this person? Because this is a state of awareness. Let's do some simple things. And they're like, oh, well, what? Is he okay? Yeah, sure. This is resonance. It's not, it's in between mesmer and, linguistic programming, using that charge of that very fantastic ancestral divinity that presents itself in the form of resonance.
Yeah.
And so, what's an example? Erase their name. I turn myself into Justin Bieber. You take their wallet and keys, with permission, and they're videotaping this tonight. And you wake them up, and what's going on? And their friends videotaping this going, John, are you there? Do you missing something? Wallet and keys. Now, from a psychologist's perspective, they would call that a reverse hallucination. But quite frankly, that's a state of awareness. And they're videotaping this, and they're like, John, what's going on? Well, when are we starting? And they're just like, holy shit. And then he takes a second and he looks over and goes, oh, it's Justin Bieber. Can I get a photo with him? I look like Justin Bieber. I definitely have Justin Bieber. But then you instantly shift this, and most people would create this level of, repeating this state to get to a somnambulistic state that then is conscious. Because when you take the spectrum of a gamma brainwave and an epsilon brainwave, you are in the sweet spot of being able to access the whole spectrum of potential when it comes to a brainwave. And so this is always great entry-level stuff. You need to understand this. My kids love doing it. And then you just charge them with the end result of feeling super high as AF, and they've never felt more profound. And whatever it is that they're asking for that is a problem is instantly erased. Phobias, whatever. I mean, this is a fraction of, you understand this. It's a fraction of a second. But I think the delusion that people need to understand is this can be used in a world of someone that would perceive things as a polarizing duality, as good or bad. This is very much an instant ability to take someone's attention. The most valuable currency is someone's attention. And when you can take that, which is pretty effortless when you understand it, all of a sudden there's change, there's healing. Yeah. I believe that there's something to what you're saying that is fundamentally in line with what I'm speaking of.
Yeah.
When I talk about, a lot of the alchemical process, this has nothing to do with the basement level hypnosis that we're speaking of. I'm talking about a high level of, transfer and transmutation, which I believe is in line with what you're teaching people, which goes beyond that entry level. That is a fundamental, we're going to see a physiological change. This is a transmutation of the material state that can be undeniable. Yeah. And we need to see it. We need to see this because the introspective, analytical, cynical, humanistic mind with, as you put it, that gauge of fight or flight is always going to go back to zero because it's finite, it's empty, it's corrupt, it's intellect, it has no value. It's going to repeat the same thing over and over again. Is that similar to what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. And I think one point that you're bringing up here too is that we are so easily influenced. We're so easily programmed by everything around us, by TV, by someone walking up to you on the street who knows how to do it, by hypnotic state.
The biggest thing was the mesmer effect, which I just throw a baby in the bathwater. This is really understanding how to activate idiomotor response. And furthermore, when you get that, which is a divinity transmission through your physical body, quite frankly, and that's a starting point of self-realization. For me, I'll do that with MGM Studios. Take them down to the MGM 5,000 square feet of real estate. Here's a quarter. Go and put it somewhere. And they're like, okay. They come back and go, all right, now I'm going to use the transmission from your body to find that very quarter. just through your ideomotor. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's already in your mind. I don't have to
Yeah.
do shit. I just have to follow the
Yeah.
resonance and make sure that it stays in line with that. I'm sure you probably use similar techniques.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like what we think and what we feel, it's not in here, it's out here. And when you know how to read that signal, you can read everything about the person and they're transmitting it all the time, whether they know it or not. What I was starting to say is just how easily programmable we are, how easily hypnotized we actually are. And if we become aware of it, and this would be my deep wish, that everyone would become aware of like, am I in this moment? Do I feel the way I feel? Do I have this perspective that I have? Am I acting the way I'm acting because I'm hypnotized, because I'm programmed to do so, because there's something that has easily influenced my system that's making this decision, but it's not really me, right? What you're talking about is, really a deeper way of utilizing, knowing that those signals are out here, that we're in each other's neurological soup all the time, and that we can both influence and another person and ourselves through it. It's how we interact with the world. We just don't know it. But I think if we can emerge into this, with our modality or others, of that understanding, I can challenge the way I'm feeling, maybe I'm hypnotized by something, change it, and then actually be able to see at least another layer of reality. So I think they blend and weave perfectly. What we have hoped to provide is a technology for people to be able to consciously understand it and do it for themselves. The awareness that this is possible, and then what else becomes possible because of it. So I think you're right. I think it's the same thing. I think we've just chunked it down into a different way of talking about it that people can start to implement and utilize and understand, without necessarily having to have a whole background of education or information. Again, it's a bit of a shortcut. And for me, I'm very, very impatient. And so everything that I've built, my part of it is to get there quickly, to not have to spend years and years and years. And eventually you spend years and you transform and change. But it's for those people who want to create something quickly that they can both understand easily and implement for themselves.
Amen. Hallelujah. And I believe we have come to the end of the road. And this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, my dear.
It's so fun.
Really, really grateful for you and everything you contribute to the betterment of mankind, and all these incredible tools that you're sharing with the world to help them be self-realized and return to who they really are. I'm going to put your social sphere and interweb connections underneath this podcast. I am going to close out this incredible conversation with one last question. What is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
My definition is the awareness that you have today. Whatever awareness, however you see the world today, is where your consciousness is. Now, you have the ability to change that in any given moment, and I encourage people to do it, but it's what you understand so far right now is your awareness, is your consciousness.
That's incredible. Incredible. I've done hundreds of these podcasts, never got the same answer, as I should not, because it's your own lens and perception of reality. Your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And anyone with an absolute truth, about face and running the other direction, because it is subjective. It is not the ultimate. The ultimate is experience, is a knowing that comes from your own journey. My goodness. Thank you, my friend. I want all my students, disciples, 126ers, and subscribers, and furthermore, I don't know who this person is, so subscribers, and just so you know, this is not an indoctrination of a cult, the 126ers. That's an actual app that I developed to take someone from zero to a hero in 5 minutes with a visual audible experience, creating a kinesthetic response. You hit play, you could be John Smith at McDonald's or the highest level of ascended guru master of consciousness, once you hit play, you are instantly 5 pina coladas in, a full body massage, and 10 days in the Bahamas. And you go, what? How is that possible? It's all got to do with that transmutation of the visual and audible, and you're playing with that neuroplasticity, the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve, however you want to put it. It's the entry level to all knowing, and that comes with zero to a hero. Everyone wants to be mastered. And then what you do is create what we call, information energy highways, synapses in the brain that are reprogrammed to create a knowing that is yours forever. I need people to understand when they go out and sample your stuff or get a session or a training or however you're offering it, this is a permanence. This is not a delusional state. When Liz shows you these techniques and you go, how is that possible? You are forever awakened to some new reality, which should have been your story 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 100 years ago. And now you're being liberated with these techniques. And I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so excited to have this conversation and reunite a friendship that we've had. You can cross over in a past or present life or reincarnation, incarnation. We can go there as a category of spiritual awareness, whether you believe it or not. We're just reunited and it feels good.
I just want to say, I want to give a big thanks to you and all of the people in the world who have dedicated their lives to the kind of work that you have in the education and the learning the ancient traditions. It's because of people like you that we're able to do the work that we can do. We may not have spent those years delving into those, but we can gain from the fact that you guys have done it and continue to practice it and keep it as pure as you do. So a big thanks to you from all of us in the world.
Well, thank you, my dear friend, and I look forward to furthering this conversation in the future at some point. I'm going to thank you for everything you contributed today. I'm going to thank the audience for spending their time with us, and I'm going to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. And with that, I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.